Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Nerina Finetto. I am the CEO of Traces&Dreams, as a Swedish transdisciplinary agency working for a wiser tomorrow and for a better future through societal change. There are different people here with me, but I would like to introduce to you first Tatiana Migaesi and Sebastian Mellgren, two of my colleagues, who will walk you through this very interesting session. I hope that you will enjoy the time together. Please, Tatiana, go ahead.
Hello and welcome to Erasmus Plus Days event. My name is Tatiana from Traces&Dreams, and I'm very happy to be moderating today's webinar together with my colleague Sebastian. We are delighted to welcome you to this event, Who Shapes the Gender Stories in 2025, organized in the scope of the WeFrame project. Let me briefly tell you about the WeFrame project. WeFrame is a European initiative that fosters dialogue and awareness on gender equality through intergenerational and intersectional perspectives. By combining research, creative workshops, and cultural events, the project explores the history, challenges, and future of equality, and aims to inspire action towards a more inclusive society. The project is coordinated by University of Ferrara in Italy, but we also have other partners, Traces&Dreams, and of course, Officine APS from Italy and Centro Ricerche CDS, also from Italy. Today, we are honored to have 7 wonderful guests joining us, who will share their insights on the power of stories, gender perspectives, and the lessons learned from their experiences and projects. We will listen to their presentations, and at the end of the session, you are more than welcome to ask questions. And now I'll hand over to my colleague Sebastian, who will tell you a bit more about narratives and how they connect to today's discussion.
Hello. So my name is Sebastian Mellgren, and I work as a narrative strategist at Traces&Dreams. And one project that inspires my approach to this work is Future Narratives, an Erasmus Plus project we worked on for the last 2 years that ended in August. In this project, we developed a method combining storytelling and futures literacy to engage youth and youth workers across Europe. The aim was to strengthen the capacity to navigate stories of the self and belonging, as well as the ability to imagine and explore diverse futures and use them in the present. Throughout this project, we have seen that people really have an urge to imagine and create stories of a better world together. However, one complexity that we encountered working with storytelling and youth was the vast range of stories circulating about gender and identity. Mapping these narratives provides, I believe, a useful background for today's conversation. So I have taken it upon myself to plot these stories on a political spectrum. And please note that stories are always contextual and may have different meanings across time and space. So using a GAL-TAN, GAL stands for Green, Alternative, Libertarian, and TAN for Traditional, Authoritarian, Nationalist, and left-wing, right-wing scale. I have identified 4 major narrative clusters shaping contemporary gender debates. On the top left, we find the queer feminist narratives. This cluster includes movements supporting trans rights, gender fluidity, and egalitarian societies. They tend to challenge traditional gender binaries and hierarchies, advocate for intersectional inclusion, gender diversity, and liberation from norms. And they place strong emphasis on collective action, economic equality, and the dismantling of patriarchal institutions. On the bottom left, we find gender-critical feminist narratives. These are still characterized by leftist values, of equality and inclusion, but maintain strict boundaries on gender identity. So examples may include Marxist feminists opposing gender self-identification and the so-called punchy moms, which is a group combining traditional gender roles and ecological values. And these narratives tend to prioritize structural support for women as a socioeconomical class and support women's rights rooted in biological sex, leading them to sometimes advocate exclusion of trans women from women-only spaces. On the top right, we find libertarian conservative narratives. This cluster stresses personal choice and free markets. It includes conservative women's entrepreneurship platforms, but also the tradwives lifestyle, which is framed here as a personal choice and stressing traditional family roles combined with a sense of female agency. And these narratives argue that the state should stay out of people's private lives. Instead, the market should decide who is qualified for a position. They emphasize individual freedom and autonomy and sees outcome as results of personal choice. They may support women in business, flexible family roles, and some degree of gender diversity, as long as it aligns with free market values. On the bottom right, we find patriarchal or manosphere narratives. This cluster includes traditional patriarchal narratives, as well as modern narratives affirming male dominance. Some of the new narratives that we find here are the so-called red pills, an analog from the Matrix films. These are men who claim to see the world as it really is. They have, so to say, taken the red pill. And the world, in their view, is controlled by feminists who are, in fact, oppressing men. We also here find the incel communities, which are men to claim to live in involuntary celibacy due to the superficiality of women. This group tend to promote traditional gender roles, seeing men as natural leaders and women as fulfilled in domestic or supportive roles. They offer vocal opposition to gender fluidity and sexual liberation, and frame feminist and queer movements as threats to social stability and national identity. So as I mentioned, it's important to recognize that these narratives are not static. They intersect, they evolve, and they have different meanings across countries and social groups. And today, our intent is to appreciate this complexity as we hear from our panel, who have extensive experience working on youth and gender throughout Europe. And they will share insights and stories that illuminate this debate in practice and explore how storytelling can foster dialogue, resilience, and inclusion.
Thank you, Sebastian. That was very insightful. Our first guest is Erica. Would you like to start your presentation and first maybe introduce yourself shortly? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't really have any slides. So I'm Erika Ruonakoski. I'm from the University of Jyväskylä, where I currently work as a senior lecturer in gender studies. Basically, philosophy has been my field as well as gender studies. And from 2016 to 2017, I worked in a project called Gender and Philosophy, which I promised to talk about here. And this the idea behind this project was to somehow try to find out whether there are ways of teaching philosophy that might be more gender sensitive than what we have had. And the problem is in philosophy that the higher you go in hierarchy from the student level to professors, the fewer women you have. So the question is, of course, like why and what could be done about it. And the project included 4 summer schools in the respective Nordic countries, which were Iceland, Norway, Denmark, and Finland. And the idea was somehow to try out some pedagogical approaches that might be of interest or might somehow make philosophy more accessible to women. My own work was not only related to these summer schools, but mainly related to this book that I actually have here. Sisters of the Brotherhood, Alienation and Inclusion in Learning Philosophy. And in that book, I sort of tried to find out not only the pedagogical means to affect the learning environments, but also I felt that I sort of had to clarify to myself and to the reader also what are the things that are behind this situation that we are living in currently. And I sort of ended up looking into the historical and social affective and so on, and also the power relations in the academia, to give it's a short book, but in a kind of as full a picture as I could for women's participation in academic philosophizing and studying. And so I actually did do some small surveys even, and I interviewed people, and what came out was that many students felt that they were more interested in philosophy in its as a fundamental research on existence and these fundamental questions, rather than as philosophy as a game that sometimes seems to be the way that philosophy operates and is taught in universities. I guess what I sort of found out also that I felt that women need to have some kind of roots in philosophy, and the problem was, of course, that in the past we have always been doing philosophy as well as men, but we have also always been the minority. So and there, especially in the history of philosophy, only with modernity we have had women philosophers with whose texts have been preserved to us. Or actually there were also, well, I don't go into the history so much, but anyway, the point is how to get this feeling of togetherness, the women, so that women could have this feeling or experience of we as women in philosophy. So my suggestions were that obviously the simplest way might be to go through feminist philosophy, so you could find your way within this field and somehow acknowledge what you are doing and how you are situated, rather than just try to close your eyes from this alienation that you may be feeling within philosophy. And also so I think it has to do also with how we are, what kind of philosophy is being taught, and so that kind of and also one thing that people talk about a lot, in this recent research on teaching philosophy, is how many women lecturers you have in philosophy. But these are all so I guess my basic feeling was that it was not necessarily such straightforward discrimination that is going on, but more like these subtle feelings of alienation and subtle forms of discrimination also that have been discussed earlier also. But maybe I already used my time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. How do you imagine the future of women's togetherness in philosophy? What gives you hope in this aspect?
I, what gives me hope? Oh, okay, so well, the main thing is that what I found out that was that that the women students were actually quite as passionate about philosophy as men students were. So I think that gives hope. So it's not like philosophy is something that is somehow inherently not good, not somehow natural for women to learn, but it's something that they actually love. So that gives me hope. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Sebastian, do you want to?
Yes, thank you very much. We are going to hear from Joschka now, so I will let you present yourself.
Hi, I'm Joschka Köck from Theatre to Press Vienna. So in German, it's Theater der Unterdrückten Wien. We are civil society organization, movement organization based in Vienna, obviously. And we are one part of a big global movement, the Theatre of the Oppressed movement. I don't know, maybe some of you heard of it. And one of our focuses is to do feminist work with Theatre of the Oppressed, which we think is very suitable for it. And one project that I want to present here, I get dark at the times, is the project Behind the Shadows Light, which was conducted in 2022 and 2023 with an Italian partner organization, Affabulazione. And it's actually nice because tonight I'm going there and meeting them again. It is a long-term partnership and we are really happy to have them. So this is why I have to leave you earlier, because I take the night train to Rome. But I will show you one of the results from this project, and then also going through some of the core tenets of it. I hope that you will see what I see. Yeah, this is another project that I will talk about later. So we created a toolkit on how to use Theatre of the Oppressed and Shadow Theatre together to create queer feminist narratives on gender-based violence. And as Sebastian talked about the narratives on gender, I think it's very interesting that it's very interesting that when we talk about gender-based violence in the general discourse, often it is not very queer feminist. So, for instance, we will see that that violence against queer people is not represented when we talk about gender-based violence on the one hand, and also as far as gender-based violence is a taboo topic within all societal spheres, it's also one in queer communities, because queer communities consider themselves very progressive, as we just learned. So talking about queer feminist gender-based violence within the community is also a taboo. So we gathered for a 1-week training in Italy to create a play on this using shadow theater, and you can see some of the images here in our toolkit. If you are interested in downloading the toolkit, you can always go to our website tdu-wien.at and download it there. And I'm just skimming a little bit through it. So the first introduction that we give people who have no contact with the topic at all is this small comic in the beginning, which basically breaks the narrative of that you're either this or that, but you are more, you are a rainbow. And we also try to do not shadow theater that is black and white, but we try to do a very colorful rainbow shadow theater. And the key assumption of the project was also that putting people into a box is an act of violence. And you can see some alarming statistics from back then. So this was 2023. And what we try to do is develop a pedagogical method that is trauma aware and that creates braver and safer spaces in a queer feminist way while facilitating our project. And then I think this is also some important parts. This is maybe the first thing that I wanted to present, because the people facilitating this webinar asked me to present specifically this project. But I also want to talk shortly about a more recent project, which is Push Backlash. It's a Horizon Europe project, where we address the situation that we are in now, a full-blown anti-gender backlash, where we don't talk about gender anymore in positive ways, and we are on retreat and in defense. And what can we do against it? And what we did is we've implemented a legislative theater, which is a way of making real change in the real world using theater. It's a method of participatory democracy. And we also created a toolkit here. It's called Tools of Resistance, Participatory Theater Against the Anti-Gender Backlash. You can download this in pushbacklash.eu, this toolkit. And what is really fascinating here is that we worked in 3 universities, Budapest, Salzburg, and Amsterdam. And it was really possible, even in a university like Budapest, which is really on the verge of being closed down for holding still liberal gender views, to make progressive change in the terms of gender. And again, it was about gender-based violence in universities. And we managed to really make progressive change even in so-called illiberal democracies. So I think this is maybe some glimpses of what we are doing. I think this would be my presentation. If you have any questions, I am happy for them.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have a question. So you work very extensively with theater and gender, and I was wondering, what particular power does theater hold as a mean of storytelling to work towards more inclusive and progressive gender norms, which I understand that you are doing?
It's a brilliant question. I think when I read your webinar description, it was really about online hate and hate speech and fake news. And what we do through theater is very analog. It's real people in real space, and it's emotions and bodies, and they are here. And this is also how we can make intersectional bodies present in a real space to people who are maybe not exposed to them in a normal setting. And maybe especially for the shadow theater part, it's an incredible possibility to make stories that are in the taboo zone very visible, but not exposing people so that it's hurting them or re-traumatizing them. So we are trying to find ways to create metaphors create narratives in this sense. Metaphors are narratives in a basic sense that show the reality without having to do an academic explanation or a feminist ideology, but it's very basic. And I'm asked to share the links, and I cannot do it. I can only share to hosts and panelists, so I don't know how I can do it. But I will be happy to share the links later.
If you share the links with me, I can share them with everyone.
Great. Super.
Okay, I think we continue, Tatiana.
Yes. 1 second. Our next guest is Amalia. Do you want to introduce yourself and share your presentation?
Yes, hello everyone. I didn't prepare any presentation because usually I make really ugly slides. And so unfortunately you have to listen to me. So I would like to introduce myself. My name is Amalia, and I work as an European project manager for an NGO called Sinergie, which is based in Naples, Italy. But I am also a PhD candidate in law and organizational studies for the promotion of diversity and inclusion, where I am conducting a research on multi-species social justice. But I'm here today to tell you about the project I'm coordinating, which is an Erasmus Plus Key Action 3 project called Future Chronicles, which has as main and general goal to provide young women with theoretical, practical tools, not only to identify fake news, but especially to start deconstructing all the distorted narratives that often emerge in the media about women and minorities. Indeed, when digital media first appeared, they were celebrated as tools of empowerment, as a way to democratize information, amplify diverse voices, connect people across borders. But over time, these same tools have also become instruments of repression, particularly against women and minorities. We now see how social media and digital platforms can be used to silence those who challenge power, for example, by spreading fear, misinformation, hate. And as Nobel Prize-winning journalist Maria Ressa said, gender disinformation is a new threat now that harms not only individuals, but the very foundation of democracy and equality. And our project, Future Chronicles, was created in response to this reality because it addresses a specific and urgent question: how we can really empower young people to recognize and resist gender disinformation that is defined as false or misleading contents, news, narratives, targeting women and marginalized groups, in order to exclude them from the public life because they challenge the power structure, of course. In the project, we always take an intersectional approach, understanding that gender discrimination interacts with other dimensions, for example, with class, race, disability, sexuality, and so on, shaping how people are represented and often, of course, misrepresented in the media landscape. Through training, storytelling, international cooperation, we want to give young people the skills to deconstruct these narratives, to identify manipulation, including the use of AI-generated deepfakes, for example, and to reclaim their voices in democratic space. This project brings together partners from Italy, Spain, North Macedonia, Slovakia, Sweden, Romania, so 6 different European countries with 6 different histories and challenges, internal challenges. We are currently implementing an online training course composed of 9 modules, and each of these modules explore the world of information and disinformation from different perspectives, presenting also a variety of real-life examples, and also taking an intersectional point of view, for example, an ableist point of perspective on gender disinformation, or highlighting the need to decolonize our gaze. Of course, there are also many challenges connected to the implementation of the project that arise of multiple levels, both individual and collective, both intimate and relational. From my point of view, the most difficult thing is that you need always to challenge and deconstruct yourself. To try to view your story, your life, your privilege from a critical point of view. But I believe that this topic has been always a crucial topic throughout history, but perhaps today it is even more so, because every time I read the main Italian newspaper or scroll through my social media feeds, I come across misleading and false headlines and articles, especially about 2 women in particular, Francesca Albanese and Greta Thunberg now, 2 women that have had the courage to speak the truth, to defend our democratic values, and to stand up for the freedom of all the peoples. For example, Greta Thunberg in particular has, since the very beginning of her career as a climate activist, been mocked for her physical appearance, subjected to ableist discriminations, and dismissed simply for being young. And now she faces waves of hatred for taking part in what I believe to be one of the greatest humanitarian acts of our contemporary history, for which she has been imprisoned, tortured, and yet the media continue to speak of her in infantilizing terms, portraying her as irrational or irresponsible. So a narrative that perfectly illustrates how women who challenge power are still systematically silenced and discredited just for being women. And that's it for me. And I really thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you for your contribution. We really appreciate what you are doing. Just a follow-up question about the project. So you mentioned that now you are on the phase of implementing online courses, but I wanted to ask you, during the research phase or even the phase now of implementing the courses, did you notice, was there something surprising what you found that may have changed your perspective on the topic?
You know, the fact is that maybe the reality is worse than how I imagined before. Because of course, even if I studied, for example, colonialism, because I studied Sub-Saharan African University, or if I took gender studies and I now delving also into gender issues regarding human and non-human relations. For me now, reality is worse because we are now in a very transformative phase with artificial intelligence. So I was really struggling to identify what was true, for example, an image or a video from what is not true. And so I noticed how I am easy to manipulate in reality. And because as everyone, sometimes I read news in a passive way, or because we are constantly in a flux of information. And so for me, the most challenging part is to recognize that even if I'm 30 years old, I work, I study, I'm also easy to manipulate as everyone else. So young generations now that are growing up in a world already with the artificial intelligence, it will be more challenging for them, I guess. So I hope I answered your question.
It's sad to hear that the reality is much worse, but it means that we have to do a lot.
Yeah, but we can challenge it. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let us move to another, Sebastian.
Yes, thank you very much, Amalia. That was very touching. And we will now hear from Ingrid. Would you like to present yourself, please?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Ingrid. I use she, her pronouns, and I am from Norway. I work in an organization called JM Norway, which is a youth and music organization. Our aim is to work towards a more inclusive and representative youth and music ecosystem. And today I'm going to talk to you about a project that we have been doing for over 10 years. It's called Loud, and it's a music project where the target group is girls, trans, and non-binary youth. And it was started as a response to actually a media conversation that was going on in Norway around 2010 that was talking about the fact that there were very few women on the festival stages during the summers in Norway. And we read a lot of the articles, and we didn't really see any initiative to try to create some change. So that's kind of the starting point of the project. And also the fact that all of us working there are musicians. And growing up, we really missed having some female, non-binary and trans role models to look up to in the music industry and music scene. I also have to mention that we are part of a big global network called JM International. That's why we have our name. That is the largest network of youth and music organizations in the world. So Loud started as a band camp. So 30 or actually 60 kids, but divided into 2 weeks, come to a dormitory school and stay there for a week, and then learn instruments and make bands and write songs. And we talk about norm creativity. I know challenging norms was already mentioned here, so that's kind of like our angle. And specifically this summer and also previous summers, we've had exchanges with our sister camps in Europe. There is approximately 15 or 20 similar projects around in Europe, and in the world there is also many camps, both in the US and the African continent and Latin America. So check it out if you have interest to see if there's a camp close to you. The reason I'm talking about this project is also because, as I mentioned, it started as a response to a media debate concerning the representation of women in music stages and festivals. And I also wanted to build on what Joshka was saying about the fact that queer narratives was not really a part of the discussion. Back then, it was a binary discussion. And also that I talk a bit about like the music ecosystem, because I think the music scene is not only the people who are performing on stage, it's the entire system behind it. Yes, thank you, Sebastian. So we are also trying to work bottom up through this project, through the Loud project, by teaching young girls, trans and non-binary youth to play music and write songs. We have to shift the narrative a bit, but the same discussions are still happening in Norway every summer, and I'm guessing in many of your countries as well. So it's still a work that needs to be done. I think also one thing that is increasing and that is relevant to talk about in this context is the increasing not issues, but the increasing problems with mental health in youth is something that has been going up drastically since COVID, and specifically working with queer and trans youth. There are also many barriers that can create mental illness, and one of the things that we've been working a bit with lately is how do we take care of these participants that we really want to take part of our projects, but we are just an NGO, we are not professional psychologists. So that's kind of like a balance that we are facing, and also, as mentioned here, just addressing gender policies and gender topics is increasingly difficult. And we've been lucky in Norway that a lot of funding for NGOs has been targeted towards representation and diversity, but we're seeing also that is decreasing. So that is something that we're working on. But I wanted to just, as a last thing, also touch on some things that we have learned through our project over the past 12 years. We've developed our own methodology or pedagogy that is very strongly based on all the research that has been done on norm criticism and norm creative approaches. So the point of it is to identify and challenge norms within our organization and in our projects that create barriers for participation. So similar to many of my co-panelists, we work in an intersectional perspective, and we feel that that is the best way to actually address this target group and work with the youth. And we also have experienced the value and importance of targeted projects to a specific target group, because especially working with art, but also in any other field, you need to feel safe in order to express yourself. That's true in life in general. So having this specific target group that is girls, trans, and non-binary youth also ensures a feeling of safety, because many of these participants feel alienated in traditional music spaces. And as I said, safety is a foundation to be able to express yourself. So that's really important. And as I said, we have this bottom-up approach, but we are also trying to target this from the top down. So we have created trainings and workshops for organizations and other workspaces that want to increase their knowledge on inclusive practices. So we're trying to work from both angles and hopefully bring some change to this area of our world. Yeah, and the last thing just to say is that something that has been really helpful for us is to go about it in a show, don't tell manner. So if you just show lots of young trans and girls musicians being on stage playing, having a great time, it's easier to get people to understand why it's important than having a meeting and telling them. So that's, yeah, some lessons learned from the Loud project. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. It's really powerful to hear how you identified a problem and you went straight on to do something about it. It's really great, very inspiring. Actually, you got a question from the audience, so I thought I would give up my own question in favor of Margaret, who asks you if you are seeing, or what changes you are seeing in the music industry. Like, how are your efforts affecting the music industry? Could you, is it something you can see?
I mean, we have examples of bands that have been started at camp that has gone into like the more professionalized music industry and that are doing really well. Many of them are more punk rock related bands, so they're kind of part of the underground music scene as well. But we have a music production branch of the project as well, and the representation there is even less than in traditional bands and instruments. So especially there, we have gotten a lot of feedback from female non-binary producers who have gotten the courage to produce their own albums and collaborate with others and do songwriting camps and stuff after being part of this safer environment with other people that you can relate to. So we see it, but it's small changes happening with baby steps. But yeah, thank you so much for the question.
Thank you so much for presenting. Yeah, we'll give the floor to you, Tatiana.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Irene. Would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you.
First step is unmuting myself. I have mastered that, so I'm feeling quite good. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here, and I have heard many interesting things so far. My name is Irini. I represent a small organization from Cyprus called the Serendipitous Black Cloud. It's an organization working primarily in mental health, systemic psychotherapy, trauma-informed approaches, and crisis and disaster intervention. So it comes as no surprise that as an organization, we have a great interest in gender issues and how these affect the experience of people in normal circumstances or in adverse circumstances. From all the work that we did, when I read the question for the webinar, like who shapes the gender stories in 2025, it seemed almost like it was evident, like, okay, we all know more or less. But then I thought that there are some elements that we tend to overlook because all the other elements are so intense and occasionally toxic that take the spotlight. So I think an important part of who shapes the gender stories in 2025 is our own bodies and what we do with them and how other people respond to them. And this is something that we have explored a lot under collective action, a group of organizations with a similar interest under the Body Liberation Initiative and Collective. Body liberation is a relatively new term representing the need to free from oppressive systems, to free the people, particularly youth, but not only, from oppressive systems and narratives that value certain bodies or types of appearance as more worthy, more healthy, more desirable. And it is quite different than body positivity. So in body liberation, we don't believe that bodies should be accepted or rejected. We believe they should just be, and that's the end of it. So in a sense, body liberation is a bit more radical because it's looking to change the power structures and the power narratives that shape the experience of people. Now, if you are a Generation Xer or a millennial, you were lucky enough to live in a body that people saw face to face or in a family album. So it wasn't such a prominent issue because you were somehow protected in a sense, in a way that we are not now in 2025 with social media. So now the narrative has made our body currency. A currency that we exchange in social media, looking for validation, for approval, for acceptance, and all these kind of things. And this, of course, creates and reinforces narratives that are very unhealthy and narratives that perpetuate gender stereotyping and, in many cases, patriarchal, toxic environments. And this is very evident when you see heated political debates happening online or an intense exchange of views, where if you go at the sections of the comments, you will see primary attacks to the appearance or the body type or the face of the person that are completely irrelevant to the debate at hand. Which means that if everything else fails, a lot of the attacks, particularly on young women, but not only, because we see the exact same thing happening in queer narratives, non-binary narratives, you will see people attacking the body or the presentation or the appearance and completely ignore the underlying debate and the arguments. So in an effort to counteract this, we have built a project called Gend EQ, Body Liberation for Gender Equality. It is a small-scale partnership between Latvia, Cyprus, and the Czech Republic, in which we are exploring the issue, doing small-scale research to identify the patterns that affect youth primarily in terms of their body image, mental health, but also how mental health and body image also affect civil participation. So if I am always shamed about the way I look, how does this affect my voice in public life, my voice in private life, my voice in professional life? And what happens where a lot of my effort daily goes to managing the appearance and less of my bandwidth and capacity goes towards sustaining a fulfilling life. It hasn't been easy because we need to start every discussion by offering definitions, body liberation, body positivity, body neutrality, and everything else. And also because the shame is so well ingrained and the stereotypes and the prejudice so well founded that at times it feels like trying to move a mountain by moving specks of dust. Although I guess you're expecting something more inspiring, I need to say that it can be very frustrating at times, especially when you try to communicate with people that you would expect know better and understand better and should have a more inclusive and diverse mindset, and you still have to make the debate with them as well. And of course, consumption and consumption patterns and promoting products and services also feeds into the exact same gender stereotyping and severely affects the stories we tell ourselves about our bodies, let alone the stories that other people say about our bodies. And this internal narrative is the harder one to shift. So if I had to pick one challenge, I would say it's not the ecosystem, it's not the people, it's not society, it's not anything else. It's how immovable prejudice becomes once you accept it as a reality for yourself. And how difficult it is to shift the story you are saying in your head about your own body and your presence in the world overall. So it is a small-scale project, but at least it gives us the comfort that there are other people, like-minded people working in the field. So we do hope that it will be the start to further progress. So thank you.
Thank you, Irene. This was very profound. I definitely agree with you, especially on the internal narratives. I actually saw that somebody raised their hand, so I maybe thought we can give an opportunity to ask the question to the audience. Sebastian, did you see it? Or
maybe, or otherwise you could write your question in the chat. This is also for everybody. If you have a question for the panelists, please write them and we will do our best.
That'd be easier for us. But meanwhile, I can ask a question. So I also really liked what you talked about body liberation, but do you think this idea of simply letting bodies be, is this a solution to empowering young people to resist these toxic narratives, or is it, or it's an utopia? Can we reach this?
It's a very interesting question and one we have debated in a lot of partner meetings, LTTAs and calls. But imagine how irrational it would appear in this panel if I started debating your eyelashes and saying you should never have a voice to speak because your eyelashes are too curled or too dark or too brown or too thin. It would seem like I'm completely crazy and nonsensical. However, when this discussion moves from your eyelashes to your body, somehow it appears to have some sustenance. So you shouldn't talk because you're too short, too fat, too old, too young. But in principle, it is the same irrationality. How should the vehicle through which you exist play a bigger role in your life than your actual existence? I think we should try to see how irrational it is to judge the value of an opinion based on the appearance of the person who voices it. It will take some time, but I hope that in a couple of generations from now, criticizing somebody for their body type, body weight, or body size, or anything like that would seem as irrational as me valuing you more or less based on your eyelashes.
Thank you. I agree. Sebastian?
Yes, thank you very much, Irene, for sharing this. And we do have a question from Madeleine, but I'm gonna save it so we have time for other panelists to speak, and then we'll come back to it. So the next one to speak is Aroa. Would you like to present yourself?
Good evening. Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Aroa Carmona. I'm here representing Oceans Nanya, which is an organization that is based in Zagreb, in Croatia, but I'm actually from Spain, from Barcelona, and I'm here as a function of a trainer of the project I will talk about later. But just for you to know who is Ocean Znanja, these organizations are NGO, functions as a platform where young people and people that work with young people can build their competences in becoming active in society. No, they provide different levels of support and literal and figurative spaces to learn and put what has been learned in practice in the local community in which we work. So I'm here to talk about the project She Narrator. But why I'm representing Ocean Znanja, it's because the first edition it happened in Spain, but then Ocean was part of the participants, and they got so impact, I can say, that they decided also to create their own in Zagreb. And I'm here actually talking about the second edition, which was called She Narrator Activism and Social Change. And it was 2 years ago, last year, I don't forgot. So our project, She Narrator, and I hope that we can again implement it in different parts, because it has, let's say, like a formal structure, but it can shape depending on the needs of each organization. It was a European training course focused basically on feminist narratives, on exploring how stories shape of our understanding of gender, and how storytelling can become a tool for a social change, which we have been talking since the beginning of this webinar. This project brought together youth workers and educators from different European countries, also overseas countries like Guadeloupe and islands that are very far, but they are part of the European community, with the aim basically to reflect on how patriarchal narratives continue to influence our social system, and to co-create together with the participants new and inclusive and empowering ones through different types of activities of non-formal education. That was very relevant because we were focusing on, so we were asked, no, for many youth workers, they express as they need to create or to know different practical and creative tools to work on gender equality, especially when addressing to Generation Z and Alpha, that are nowadays living in a digital environment full of contradictory messages about feminism and gender roles. No, so we followed the age, so the European Institute for Gender Equality priorities, and we basically wanted to focus on intersectional perspective, identifying as well and including and encouraging people from different types of genders and different communities to be part of it. So basically, one of the things that we were addressing and identifying before was how can we create together inclusive tools and methodologies to discuss gender equality, and not just as a very strict discussion that not everybody can understand or not everybody will want to be part of it, but also in an accessible formats for anyone to be touched and be able to reflect on it. How to work on gender issues with younger generations, so through new forms and communication and digital media. As well, another thing that we also thought was very important for our youth centers, schools, NGOs, organizations, so on, that people were coming from, is the need to rethink public and educational spaces. So physically, so to put the feminism in the physical space, no? How are they created in terms of architectonic way that can be done in a more inclusive perspective, and the need to foster environments to embrace gender diversity, no, moving beyond all this time male and female binary, and be able to welcome all the identities. But you know, one of the things that we have learned the most, and I think that someone said it already or more than once in this webinar, is that the feminism must be lived and felt, but not only discussed. So the fact is that when the project got more powerful in learning experience for both participants and facilitators, was when the lessons were becoming more and more lived. So these helped participants connect emotionally with the topic and reflect on their own gender experience, and not just talk about it, not just discuss and theorize, and you see, so taking it into the real life, and then using it as a powerful tool to start developing new ways of seeing it. And one of the difficulties that we found, and it's not just in this project, because as Aroa, I'm also related to other feminist projects and types, not only European, also in a local based, is the fact that not many people consider themselves men were participating. So that was very important as well to talk about gender roles and masculinity, and open a deep reflection of how expectations also affect men. But the lack of the male participants itself became a topic of reflection, no? Showing how important is to involve men as allies in gender equality work, especially if we are talking about youth work. So that's it, basically. This was She Narrator, and this will always be She Narrator.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was really interesting to hear about your project. What struck me the most was when you talked about how important it is that people feel emotionally connected with what they are doing. And I wanted to ask you if you have some piece of advice to share with us, with the audience, about how to do that. How do you make people become emotionally engaged with the topic?
I think the key is to use some tools that you able people to feel the main character of what we are talking. So not just to take the topic and see it from an above perspective, like everybody must understand this in the same way, but it's more kind of doing in a way that you will be working on the topic only through your experience. It doesn't matter theories, it doesn't matter whatever, I don't know, you have learned in a super cool webinar or whatever, but more how did you live it, and how are you living it in your daily life with your youngsters, with your even with your daughters and sons. So going very into a very natural life standards, but that is where reflection, deep reflections can start. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The floor to Tatiana and to our last speaker.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Hara. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your project?
Thank you. My name is Hara. I am here on behalf of Inter Alia, which is a civic society organization based in Athens, Greece, operating worldwide. And we are active in the fields of youth, education, culture, and advocacy. I am sharing also my screen. Can you confirm that you can see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I will speak about this project called Mothers of Europe. It's a 2-year-long project that finishes this February, and it's a partnership of 7 organizations from 6 countries, which are Greece, Spain, Czechia, Hungary, Germany, and Poland. And I will go a bit through what happened in this project. The idea is that we wanted to talk about how women are eliminated from historiography, from history, and how history is written by, about, and for men very often. And we did this in a series of ways. The first stage was the publication. So what happened is that in each country, a team of researchers and historians came together to select 3 women that played an important part in the history of that country, but also in Europe in general, and to showcase who they were, where they came from, and what they did. And then, no, not yet. And then the idea would be that this publication would turn into an exhibition. We started with an open event where we invited women from different fields, so journalists, art historians, psychotherapists, who talked about feminist narratives of history. And then we started organizing our exhibition called Disrupting the Archives. Here you can see a little bit also the names of the 18 women from the 6 countries that I mentioned. So it's Olga Havlova, Anna Arendt, Melina Mercouri, Agnieszka Holland, just to name a few. They were women that impacted history in a variety of ways. Some of them were artists, others were politicians, others were activists, and so on. And we wanted, this was a big challenge to make this publication, which was just a text. Sorry, I need to open the light so you can see me, I think. We tried to turn it into a space that is alive and somehow brings these women to life. So we did that by not only presenting the research text, but also photographs of the women, posters from their films or theater plays, videos where they speak or act, audio recordings. Some of them were radio producers, newspaper excerpts of the time, and replicas of their personal items. We did this we have done it so far in Athens and in Crete, 2 Greek cities, and we have the opening of our 3rd exhibition in Corinth next week. And we organized this information into 5 thematics. So there was an introduction and a timeline tying all these women together, which surprisingly, many of them had met each other during their lifetimes or had influenced each other. And then the first thematic was everyday communities. So here we presented women who played important roles in their communities or created new ones, opened their homes to dissidents, exiled, refugees, and so on. Then we had life in displacement with women who created change because or despite the fact that they were refugees or migrants. Leading the Way was a more literal title about women who had important roles in politics. Breaking Through Barriers was about the women who overcame barriers for the next generations to come. And How to Heal Wounds was about the women who, through law or through poetry or other media, heal the wounds of the past. This is it. We also had a book presentation and things like that. I will stop sharing and send the link of this research so that you can also read it if you want. It's translated in all the languages of the consortium. And I think that's it.
Thank you. That was also very interesting. I'm also a big fan of history. I wanted to ask you actually, because I also researched a bit about the project, and it also says it has a very intergenerational focus. So how was it exactly implemented in the project?
Yes, okay. I actually wanted to say this, so thank you. This has to do mostly with the process that the researchers and historians followed in their part of the work, and especially in the case of Greece, and I know that this is the case in almost all countries. The idea was to select women from different periods of history. So some of them are still alive and still acting in the direction that they're acting. Many of them were, for example, Anna Ketley, the oldest one, was born in the late 1800s. So we tried to show also the change, not only in the different parts of the world, but also across history.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for your contribution.
Okay, thank you so much. We have heard from all the panelists. I would now encourage everyone to send us questions. If you have any questions for the panelists, we still have 13 more minutes. And I thought we could start with the question that I've saved. So from Madeleine asking us if you as panelists, do you find that polarization today is stronger than before, thanks to social media and thanks to the backlash to progressive movements that the last few years have seen? And I think this is not directed to anyone in particular, but is anyone, I think Erika wants to say something about this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think maybe the word amplification is somehow correct here. But at the same time, I think there is, like, if we talk about the manosphere or the darker side of social media in general, you can see that it's kind of a place where people who might maybe otherwise be just generally, I don't know, throwing up some ideas like expressing to their friends maybe some misogynist ideas which they might not even be subscribing to so we're at a very fundamental level, but then where you have these sort of platforms where you can join together with other people, that's where you can sort of start forming ideologies on the basis of what others have already done. And also I would say that there is, of course, like this very explicit will of some politicians, for instance, to have an effect on people's opinions and to somehow change the world radically to like more authoritarian direction. But yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Aroa wants to fill in here.
Yeah, first of all, I agree with what Erika just said. And I would like to add two things. First is yes, I guess I have the feeling. And also as a professional of peace culture, we can see that life in general is getting more and more polarized, not just in feminism, for example, but in whatever topic. So society is getting more there because the silent white mass, which is in the middle, is getting smaller. So both sides are getting bigger, no? extremes. That's one. And the second is that also in a good way as well. So we see polarization as, oh, manosfera and all of these, let's say, very dark spaces and very bad speeches. But how many cool things, very strong, are also happening in terms of empowering females, empowering diversity, gender diversity, empowering other collectives, no? So I think it's also the response of how high the level is of these actions in general.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to say quickly that if you have any questions, please send them in the chat. We cannot, when you raise your hands, I'm not sure if you do it by mistake or if you want to speak. So it's better that you send me the questions in the chat. And did you want to comment, Ingrid?
Yes, just a quick comment. I totally agree with what Erika and Arwa also said, and I think it's so it's a paradox kind of that, or I feel like we need to distinguish a bit in social media as well. You have some actors that are promoting misogynistic ideas because it benefits them and their power, and then we also have youngsters who are subscribing to the ideas, who are maybe more looking for community, which is paradoxical that we are moving away from our physical world and into the internet to find community, because at least in Western society, community is a bit fleeting. So I think this is also part of the issue, that we are not connecting in the same way that we did before, and that many young people are looking for community, and that the internet is a very easy way to get accepted into different types of communities with dangerous and misogynistic ideas. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. So I have one question, which I think could maybe Irene could address, but anyone in the panel is, of course, welcome. But I imagine growing up as a young person now, and you encounter all these conflicting narratives that are sort of pulling you in different directions. And it must be pretty hard, especially if you maybe don't have a framework to categorize and to know what is what. How do you deal with that? Like, how do you help young people, especially, navigate this in a critical way and to find their own place in all these narratives?
I am not entirely sure it is our job to guide anyone but ourselves, but I would maybe say that we need to support and empower them so they can make the journey themselves. In my head, if we are waiting for people to bloom, we need to get the weeds out. So I wouldn't interfere with the blooming, but I would definitely interfere with getting the weeds out. So I think our job as older generations is to make sure that the toxicity does not grow, that we create a safe environment for them to explore what feels right for them. And we try to operate and function in society and in our personal and social lives as decent human beings.
Thank you so much. And Hara, would you also like to add something to this?
No, I think I am good.
Sebastian, we can't hear you. You're still muted.
We have one last question from the audience. We will take it and then we have to finish up. So it's also addressed to Irene, but anyone is welcome to answer as well. Particularly for young women, I know this can apply to everyone. Our physical appearance has also been presented to us as empowering, especially when we get the validation from others, when we look good, lose weight, fix our hair, etc. Is there a way to balance feeling of empowerment for external validation with our physical appearance while knowing that most of the time the validation answers to patriarchal standards.
This is the holy grail of gender studies and media studies, I would say. This is the quest that we are all on. However, I think that our validation should come from self-care, from feeling good in who we are and what we do, feeling good in time and space. But we have been so distracted by everything else that is happening in our lives that we very rarely get a chance to chat with ourselves without a lot of voices in the background. So I think it is a process, sometimes a process that is very lonely, sometimes a process that you can do with a professional, sometimes a process you can do with trusted friends and people you share a common understanding. But I think it starts with being comfortable in being with yourself, in yourself, by yourself, and caring for yourself in the same way that we care for others, making sure they are well, they are comfortable, they are safe, they are well rested. If we can get to that point, I think we don't even realize it as validation because it has ceased to be validation and it is self-love. Therefore, far more sustainable than what can come from the outside. But it is the quest. If anyone gets there, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. We really appreciate it. And we would like to also express our gratitude to participants who were here and listened and asked questions. And we also would like to, if you want to say that if you want to follow up for more news, and there's also upcoming webinars for WeFrame, you can also find it on the social media, on the website, Facebook, LinkedIn. And also, if you want to learn more about the narratives, you can also visit the website of Traces&Dreams. Yes, we will also send you the links and the presentation.
So
Thank you so much.
So much, everyone. It has been a pleasure to be with you tonight.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. Thank you so much, Tatiana, Sebastian, and all the team behind the scene for making this possible. And I wish everyone a very nice evening, and I thank you all for the participation. I think it was a very, very relevant, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. That was also very interesting. I'm also a big fan of history. I wanted to ask you actually, because I also researched a bit about the project, and it also says it has a very intergenerational focus. So how was it exactly implemented in the project?
Yes, okay. I actually wanted to say this, so thank you. This has to do mostly with the process that the researchers and historians followed in their part of the work, and especially in the case of Greece, and I know that this is the case in almost all countries. The idea was to select women from different periods of history. So some of them are still alive and still acting in the direction that they're acting. Many of them were, for example, Anna Ketley, the oldest one, was born in the late 1800s. So we tried to show also the change, not only in the different parts of the world, but also across history.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for your contribution.
Okay, thank you so much. We have heard from all the panelists. I would now encourage everyone to send us questions. If you have any questions for the panelists, we still have 13 more minutes. And I thought we could start with the question that I've saved. So from Madeleine asking us if you as panelists, do you find that polarization today is stronger than before, thanks to social media? And thanks to the backlash to progressive movements that the last few years have seen. And I think this is not directed to anyone in particular, but is anyone, I think Erika wants to say something about this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think maybe the word amplification is somehow correct here. But at the same time, I think there is, like, if we talk about the manosphere or the darker side of social media in general, you can see that it's kind of a place where people who might maybe otherwise be just generally, I don't know, throwing up some ideas like expressing to their friends maybe some misogynist ideas which they might not even be subscribing to so we're at a very fundamental level, but then where you have these sort of platforms where you can join together with other people, that's where you can sort of start forming ideologies on the basis of what others have already done. And also I would say that there is, of course, like this very explicit will of some politicians, for instance, to have an effect on people's opinions and to somehow change the world radically to like more authoritarian direction. But yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Aroa wants to fill in here.
Yeah, first of all, I agree with what Erika just said. And I would like to add two things. First is yes, I guess I have the feeling. And also as a professional of peace culture, we can see that life in general is getting more and more polarized, not just in feminism, for example, but in whatever topic. So society is getting more there because the silent white mass, which is in the middle, is getting smaller. So both sides are getting bigger, no? The extremes, that's one. And the second is that also in a good way as well. So we see polarization as manosphere and all of these let's say very dark spaces and very bad speeches, but how many cool things, very strong, are also happening in terms of empowering females, empowering diversity, gender diversity, empowering other collectives, no? So I think it's also the response of how high the level is of these actions in general.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to say quickly that if you have any questions, please send them in the chat. We cannot, when you raise your hands, I'm not sure if you do it by mistake or if you want to speak. So it's better that you send me the questions in the chat. And did you want to comment, Ingrid?
Yes, just a quick comment. I totally agree with what Erika and Arwa also said, and I think it's so it's a paradox, kind of, that, or I feel like we need to distinguish a bit in social media as well. You have some actors that are promoting misogynistic ideas because it benefits them and their power. And then we also have youngsters who are subscribing to the ideas, who are maybe more looking for community, which is paradoxical that we are moving away from our physical world and into the internet to find community, because at least in Western society, community is a bit fleeting. So I think this is also part of the issue, that we are not connecting in the same way that we did before, and that many young people are looking for community, and that the internet is a very easy way to get accepted into different types of communities with dangerous and misogynistic ideas. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. And So I have one question, which I think could maybe Irene could address, but anyone in the panel is, of course, welcome. But I imagine growing up as a young person now, and you encounter all these conflicting narratives that are sort of pulling you in different directions. And it must be pretty hard, especially if you maybe don't have a framework to categorize and to know what is what. How do you deal with that? Like, how do you help young people, especially, navigate this in a critical way and to find their own place in all these narratives?
I am not entirely sure it is our job to guide anyone but ourselves, but I would maybe say that we need to support and empower them so they can make the journey themselves. In my head, if we are waiting for people to bloom, we need to get the weeds out. So I wouldn't interfere with the blooming, but I would definitely interfere with getting the weeds out. So I think our job as older generations is to make sure that the toxicity does not grow, that we create a safe environment for them to explore what feels right for them. And we try to operate and function in society and in our personal and social lives as decent human beings.
Thank you so much. Hara, would you also like to add something to this?
No, I think I am good.
Sebastian, we can't hear you. You're still muted.
We have one last question from the audience. We will take it and then we have to finish up. So it's also addressed to Irene, but anyone is welcome to answer as well. Particularly for young women, I know this can apply to everyone. Our physical appearance has also been presented to us as empowering, especially when we get the validation from others, when we look good, lose weight, fix our hair, etc. Is there a way to balance feeling of empowerment for external validation with our physical appearance while knowing that most of the time the validation answers to patriarchal standards?
This is the holy grail of gender studies and media studies, I would say. This is the quest that we are all on. However, I think that our validation should come from self-care, from feeling good in who we are and what we do, feeling good in time and space. But we have been so distracted by everything else that is happening in our lives that we very rarely get a chance to chat with ourselves without a lot of voices in the background. So I think it is a process, sometimes a process that is very lonely, sometimes a process that you can do with a professional, sometimes a process you can do with trusted friends and people you share a common understanding. But I think it starts with being comfortable in being with yourself, in yourself, by yourself, and caring for yourself in the same way that we care for others, making sure they are well, they are comfortable, they are safe, they're well rested. If we can get to that point, I think we don't even realize it as validation because it has ceased to be validation and it is self-love. Therefore, far more sustainable than what can come from the outside. But it is the quest. If anyone gets there, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. We really appreciate it. And we would like to also express our gratitude to participants who were here and listened and asked questions. And we also would like to, if you want to say that if you want to follow up for more news, and there's also upcoming webinars for WeFrame, you can also find it on the social media, on the website, Facebook, LinkedIn. And also, if you want to learn more about the narratives, we can also visit the website of Traces and Dreams. Yes, we will also send you the links and the presentation.
So
Thank you so much.
so much, everyone. It has been a pleasure to be with you tonight.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. Thank you so much, Tatiana, Sebastian, and all the team behind the scene for making this possible. And I wish everyone a very nice evening, and I thank you all for the participation.